I've dealt with some outrageous HOA stories before, but this one was different. It started on a quiet Tuesday morning at my family's lake cabin, the kind of peaceful spot where you can hear the water lapping against the shore and the birds singing in the trees. But that serenity didn't last long. Just as I sat down at the wooden dining table with a fresh cup of coffee, preparing for what I thought would be a private, confidential meeting with a U.S. district judge about a pending HOA lawsuit, I heard tires screeching on the gravel road outside. Seconds later, the front door slammed open so hard it rattled the picture frames on the wall. And there she was. Karen. The self-proclaimed queen of the HOA. Her face was flushed, her eyes blazing with fury, and she marched into my cabin like she owned the place. I barely had time to process what was happening when she started shouting accusations. Wild claims about illegal gatherings, secret deals, and plotting against the neighborhood. She had no idea who was sitting across the table from me at that very moment, a federal judge reviewing evidence that could decide the future of her entire HOA. The tension in the room was so thick you could feel it pressing against your chest. My wife froze in the hallway, wide-eyed, clutching her phone, ready to call 911. The judge raised an eyebrow but said nothing, quietly flipping through his folder of documents while Karen's voice echoed through the cabin. I knew one thing for sure, whatever happened next could change everything. What Karen didn't know, was that this meeting wasn't just about me. It was about her HOA, her reckless leadership, and the long trail of complaints piling up against her. But instead of keeping quiet, she just walked straight into the storm she created, and she was about to find out just how high the stakes really were. Karen didn't just storm in. She exploded. Her words came out like rapid fire, each accusation louder than the last. "You think you can undermine my authority," she screamed, pointing a shaking finger at me as if I'd just committed a federal crime. "This entire lake community belongs to the HOA, and I am the HOA." Her voice cracked with anger, and for a moment, the only sound in the room was the slow, deliberate flip of a page from the judge's folder. I finally stood up, trying to keep my composure. "Karen, you need to leave. Right now." But she wasn't hearing me. She stormed closer, heels thudding against the wooden floor, slamming her palm down on the table so hard the coffee mugs rattled. The judge calmly removed his glasses, folded them, and placed them on the table, a subtle but chilling sign that he was taking this far more seriously than I expected. Then, in an even tone, he spoke for the first time. "Ma'am, are you aware that this is an active federal investigation?" The entire cabin went silent. You could almost hear the clock ticking on the wall. Karen blinked, clearly caught off guard, but her pride wouldn't let her back down. "I don't care who you are," she snapped. "This land, this lake, and every property around it fall under my rules." That's when I realized she didn't know. She had no clue that her HOA was under review for financial misconduct, misuse of funds, and multiple civil rights violations, and the judge sitting across from me wasn't just here for a friendly chat. He was gathering testimony for a case that could dismantle her entire empire. I watched as the judge leaned back in his chair, studying her like a surgeon preparing for a delicate operation. "Mrs. Peterson," he said slowly, "you might want to choose your next words carefully." But Karen wasn't done. She doubled down, accusing me of conspiring with outsiders to destroy her control over the community. What she didn't realize was that every word she was shouting was being recorded. And would soon become Exhibit A. Karen's face turned a deeper shade of red, and I could see her chest rising and falling as she tried to control her breathing, but she failed miserably. She jabbed her finger at the judge this time, her voice trembling with rage. "You don't scare me," she spat. "I've built this community from the ground up, and no outsider, no court, and definitely no homeowner is going to tell me how to run it." The judge remained stone-faced, silently flipping through a stack of documents like he'd seen this 1,000 times before. My heart pounded in my ears. My wife stood frozen in the hallway, still clutching her phone, her thumb hovering over the call button. I took a small step forward, lowering my voice, trying one last time to de-escalate. "Karen, stop. You don't know what you're walking into." But then she made the mistake that sealed her fate. Karen reached across the table and grabbed one of the confidential folders sitting in front of the judge. It happened so fast I barely processed it. She ripped it open, scattering papers across the cabin floor. As the documents fluttered around us, one bold headline became impossible to ignore. Federal investigation into HOA mismanagement and fraud. Karen froze, her eyes darting over the words. In an instant, the furious queen of the HOA transformed into someone, terrified. Her hands trembled as she realized just how deep this went. The judge finally spoke again, his tone sharper now. "Mrs. Peterson, interfering with federal documents is a crime. I suggest you return those immediately." But Karen wasn't ready to back down. "This is a setup," she screamed, stomping her foot like a cornered animal. "You're all plotting against me." Her voice cracked on the last word, and for the first time, I saw something flicker behind her anger, fear. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. The judge calmly gathered the scattered papers while Karen stood motionless, her entire empire teetering on the edge of collapse. And that's when we all heard it, the low rumble of tires crunching on gravel outside. Backup had arrived. The sound of tires crunching against gravel grew louder until two black SUVs rolled to a stop outside the cabin. Within seconds, 3 federal agents stepped out, their jackets marked U.S. Marshals in bold yellow letters. Karen's bravado evaporated instantly. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. For the first time since she stormed in, she looked small. The judge remained seated, his expression calm but authoritative. "Agents," he said, gesturing toward Karen without even looking at her. "This is the individual we discussed earlier." The lead marshal nodded, resting his hand casually on his holstered sidearm, a silent but clear warning. Karen spun around to face me, her voice trembling now. You called them, didn't you? You set me up." Her eyes darted wildly, searching for an exit, but the cabin door was already blocked. "Karen," I said carefully, "no one set you up. You did this to yourself." The agent stepped inside, and the entire cabin seemed to shrink under their presence. One of them spoke firmly but calmly, "Mrs. Peterson, we need you to step aside." But Karen wasn't ready to surrender her self-proclaimed crown. "You can't do this," she shrieked, pointing wildly at the judge. "I am the HOA. I control this entire lake." The judge slowly closed his folder, stood up, and finally addressed her directly. "Not anymore, Mrs. Peterson. The evidence against you and your board is overwhelming: fraudulent fees, illegal foreclosures, and misuse of community funds. It ends today." Karen staggered backward, bumping into a chair, her face pale as the words sank in. The marshals moved closer, but she raised both hands defensively. "I didn't do anything wrong," she shouted, though her voice cracked under the weight of her own lies. Then came the final blow. The lead marshal produced a warrant and placed it on the table. "We have authority to seize HOA records effective immediately," he said. "And we strongly advise you to cooperate." Karen stood frozen, her empire collapsing piece by piece. But just when it seemed like the chaos had peaked, she made one last, desperate move that no one saw coming. For a moment, the entire cabin was silent. You could hear the faint creak of the wooden floorboards as Karen shifted her weight, her eyes darting between the marshals, the judge, and the door. And then, she snapped. With a sudden burst of energy, Karen lunged toward the open folder on the table, grabbing as many documents as she could and bolting toward the back door that led to the deck overlooking the lake. "Karen, stop," one of the marshals barked, but she was already halfway there. My wife screamed as the screen door slammed open and Karen sprinted across the deck, papers flying behind her like confetti. The judge didn't move, didn't flinch, he just sighed, muttering under his breath, "And this will make it worse." Before Karen could get far, two marshals cut her off at the end of the deck. She froze, clutching the stolen documents to her chest like they were her lifeline. Her voice cracked as she shouted, "You don't understand. I built this place. Without me, this community is nothing." The lead marshal stepped forward, his voice firm but calm. "Mrs. Peterson, you need to hand over those documents and come with us. Right now." For a moment, I thought she'd resist. Her knuckles were white from gripping the papers, her chest heaving with rage and panic. But then, something shifted. She looked down at the lake, at the cabins she once ruled over, and for the first time, reality seemed to hit her. Slowly, Karen dropped the papers. They fluttered to the ground like dead leaves, scattering across the deck. One marshal retrieved them while another stepped forward, placing her in handcuffs without resistance. The fight was gone. Back inside, the judge calmly sat back down and closed his folder. "Well," he said dryly, "I think we're done here." As Karen was led past me, she glared, but her eyes were different now, no longer fiery, but hollow. Her empire was gone, her power stripped away, and the HOA she controlled would soon face a complete federal overhaul. If you've ever faced an HOA nightmare, let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more shocking HOA case files.